All right, hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, a 30-minute crash course in giving feedback. Today's presenter is Allison Horak. For your convenience, the slide deck for today's presentation will be available on the CPS HR Consulting website. Please visit cpshr.us to download. This session is also being recorded, and we will post a link to the recording on the same page of our website as soon as it is available. In order to ensure a high quality recording, all attendees are encouraged to mute your mic. If you have questions for Allison, please feel free to enter them in the chat and or Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will address questions at the end of the presentation as time allows. And now let's get started.
All right, thanks, Angelique. I'm Allison. I'm your instructor for this 30-minute crash course in giving and receiving. I've got a little bit of info on receiving feedback too at the end. So let's jump in. We're not going to waste any time because we've only got 30 minutes. So I'm going to start by asking you to think back. So since we only have 30 minutes, there's not going to be a ton of interaction. Now, of course, at any time you could put stuff in the chat and I will do my best to monitor that, and Angelique is helping me. But this specifically, I do want to hear from you all in the chat for this. So hearken back in your minds to a time when you received feedback from someone at work, whether positive or constructive. It could be last week, it could be 10 years ago, it doesn't matter to me, but just think back to a time where someone approached you with either positive or constructive feedback, but I do want you to look at it through this lens. What did the person do well? So there is an assumption built into that question that you think they did it well. So that's what I'm really asking. Think back to a time when you received feedback, and even if it was constructive, or definitely if it was positive, what did the person do well? I know it's kind of a generic question, but was it when they chose to do it, how they approached you, the words that they chose, whatever. But I'd like to get your opinion here. And this is kind of our starting point. This is going to kickstart us. Came from like a place of support. She was supportive, amicable. It was sincere. I felt valued. That's interesting. Gave specific examples. So LaCandice, that's definitely something we're going to hit on in our 30 minutes today. Thank you. Sincere, again, awesome. Positive, valued my opinion. Direct, but not passive aggressive or vague, from Allison. Thank you. Lanisa, they provided positive feedback and solutions to assist. Okay. Excellent. Timely. Kylie, thank you. Positive, objective, genuine. So definitely specificity is coming up multiple times. Appreciate that. Okay, and Denise, this is interesting. Without giving me the answer, helped me think more on my own. Okay, and Benjamin mentions the word rapport. All right, so keep them coming. I'll see them. Thank you. I am going to go forward in the interest of time. But this list of things that we have in the chat is really a great way to get us started and start thinking about, okay, that's when we were on the receiving end. Now the focus of our webinar is when we have to give feedback, mostly. That's our focus. What kinds of things should we be taking into consideration? And so, of course, your list is the starting point. So this is where we'll spend most of our 30 minutes is on giving feedback. So if we think about what's the point of feedback, a lot of times when I ask this question, like in a classroom setting, and we have more time to talk about it, people will raise their hand and say, we want people to feel good. And I think that's part of it. But if we really dig deeply, I believe that it comes down to these two things. If we're giving positive feedback, yes, we want the person to feel good about their efforts and all that, but what we really want to do is we want that behavior to continue. And then, of course, the corollary is what I'm going to put up next. If we're giving constructive feedback, I think it's almost always true, maybe always, we want the behavior that we witnessed to stop, but instead be replaced with something else, not just stop it, but we have to, right, if we're really doing a good job, we have to say, that didn't go too well, here's why. Let's either, I think it might have been Benjamin who said, they didn't give me the answer, but they gave me kind of led me to the answer, let me figure it out. So we either might have to tell people what they should do instead, or kind of coach them through what they should do instead. So we want to really, that's our frame of mind as we go into this. What's the point of feedback? We want good behavior to continue. We want maybe less than good behavior to stop, but be replaced with something. We're going to give people the tools for that. And so there are challenges to this. It sounds maybe easy in a kind of an academic, a sterile setting like we're in right now. But when it comes to real life, sometimes even giving positive feedback can feel a little clunky or uncomfortable. And so we are going to talk briefly just about what are some obstacles we're up against. And then, of course, I have a tool for you. So I am going to put something on the bottom of the screen here that's specific to the remote environment that some of you may be experiencing. You could put a yes in the chat or a no if a yes if you are experiencing it, a no if you're not. But I just thought, because we are where we are right now, I needed to mention this challenge with being remote. And a challenge that a lot of managers are experiencing is it's hard to catch, and I'm doing air quotes for that, but it's hard to catch our people doing good stuff, because they're not right outside of our own cubicle or our office or whatever. And so I'm getting several yeses there. Thank you. And so very quickly, I think it may be an easier said than done situation, but I think one remedy for this is what we've just done is acknowledge that it's a thing, but we know that feedback is important. So it might even mean calendaring a reminder for yourself weekly, like Fridays. Hey, it's Friday. I got Friday on the brain, but Fridays seem like a good day for this. Calendar a task for yourself. Your workers, your employees don't have to know you're kind of scheduling it, but think back on the week. And if you're not sure what your people have done, maybe send them a text, instant message, pick up the phone and say, hey, share a success with me that you had this week. And that can be such a rapport builder. That was a word that was mentioned in the chat also. And so I think we have to be a little more intentional in the remote environment. So that's just a little side note that I wanted to include. Yeah, Joseph, it's on us, right? If we're supervisors or managers, it's on us to discover what that good stuff is that they're doing. Okay, excellent. So these are typical obstacles that I hear people mention. I commiserate with this list. You may also, I really relate to this, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm not exactly sure what to say. Even if it's positive, sometimes it can be hard. And we know that good job. I mean, that has its place, we might say, but it's a little hollow. And so I think we can elevate feedback. Perhaps if it's something kind of low level that someone did, good job is enough. But I think often it's not. And people see through that it kind of lacks some sincerity and substance. And back to the word you all put in the chat, specificity. And so we're gonna combat that. But often we're not really sure what to say. We want to sound sincere, like we know we're sincere, but we want to make sure it comes across as sincere. I do think that goes back to the specificity issue. We get worried that we might ramble. I think that one's especially true when it's constructive or corrective, whatever term you prefer. But when we got to talk to somebody about correcting something that they did rather than good job, and we're like, I'm uncomfortable, and I know when I get uncomfortable, I just talk, and then I say it again, and then I may be digging a deeper hole than I actually want to do. And so we kind of need a plan of what we're going to say, and it helps keep us on track. And then let's just face it, it can be uncomfortable to give people feedback, especially when it's constructive. So I have a tool for you. Yeah, these are good comments in the chat. Thank you. Specifics are important. Be objective, consistent, not accusatory, and timely. Very good. Very good. Appreciate that. So many of you are probably familiar with this already. I did not make it up. It's been around for a long time, but I would label it as tried and true, not outdated. So it's called the STAR method, and you can see the S and the T are grouped together, and then the A and the R. And this is what it means. The S and the T means you list out, you call out the situation or the task that the person was working on. Then you talk about what the person did. And then, arguably, most importantly, you talk about the result of their actions. Probably the word because is going to be under the R. So just to make sure we understand, you're going to set the scene. Like if I were going to give Angelique feedback, I might say, Angelique, last week when we were in that meeting together, so that's setting the scene. So now Angelique knows what I'm talking about. Then I would talk very factually about specifically what Angelique did. So setting the scene, Angelique, last week when we were in that meeting together, and this is fictional, but anyway, when we were in that meeting together, and then what did Angelique do? You made sure that everyone in the meeting had a chance to share their opinion, and then stop. That's what Angelique did. Then I say the because. What's the impact? I really appreciate you doing that because I know we have several introverts on our team who sometimes their voices get drowned out, but you made sure that everyone was heard, and thank you. I just gave Angelique a star. It was to the point. It kind of primed her to accept the feedback because I said last week at that meeting we were in together, then I called out exactly what she did. Why? It shows I'm paying attention and it gives her the knowledge she needs to be able to do that again in the future. And then I am very specific about why I think what she did was effective, important, impactful, whatever. Okay. Yes, Lenka, you will get you will be able to download the slides off of our website. And Angelique, if you look up in the chat, you might see it, but Angelique will put it in the chat again, I'm sure, for us. Thank you. Okay. All right. And Marie, I'm so glad you brought that up. I know we only have 30 minutes, but side note, STAR is also how you effectively and thoroughly answer a behavioral interview question. I love that you brought that up. So you're asked a behavioral interview question like this. Tell me about a time when you had competing priorities at work. What did you do? That's a behavioral interview question. Tell me about a time when you ... This is how you answer it. Well, back when I worked for the Department of Corrections, setting the scene, you know, and I reported to 2 supervisors, then you talk about what actions you took, and then what was the result. So we can't go further down that rabbit hole, but I love that you brought it up. And that's something I love about STAR is it has multiple uses. So totally appreciate that. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's look at another example. I just kind of riffed on one for Angelique. I do have one prepared for my slides. So here it is. These are our like sentence starters just to help you remember. When you ... you said or did or responded or whatever, you know, some kind of action verb. And then that was effective or that was important or that really worked well because, again, because is the word we want to key in on for the R. All right, so here's an example, another example. When you started your presentation at the staff meeting yesterday, you told that story from your childhood about learning to ride a bicycle. That was effective because you put people at ease before speaking about that controversial policy change. So that's, again, it's a hypothetical, but I want to find out from you all that, again, this may be a review, this may be new, but what the questions at the top of the slide that I'm asking you, what do you think works with this approach? Whether you've seen it before or not, what is tracking for you here? Can you see using this? If so, why? Right, Lori, it encourages the specificity. Teresa, short and sweet. Yeah, Jennifer, I do think there's a logic to it. I appreciate you bringing that up. It has a flow, and then it gives us a stopping point too. I'm just speaking for myself, like, Allison, stop talking now. Like, you're done. You gave the feedback. And yeah, good. Brittany helps you remain consistent. Good. It has a positive ending. That's an interesting observation, Joseph. Thank you. And Laura, okay, keeps the receiver's attention. Okay, I like that. All right. So, yeah, relates to a specific incident. Denise, I think that's one of the keys. It's not this. Oh, I'm throwing Angelique under the bus here since she's our producer, but oh, Angelique, I really appreciate what a team player you are. And some of us may have uttered those words, and I'm not a hater, just saying. But it's a little hollow. I hope we can kind of see that. Does Angelique really have any idea what I am referring to if I came up to her and said that or sent her an email? Not really. Again, I know I'm harping on this, but it goes back to that specificity. And so if we embrace star, we're never going to be giving meaningless feedback to someone. Okay, good. And let's see, I'm going to just get caught up here. Yeah, they may not have even realized in the moment that what they were doing was speaking to anyone. I mean, like, speaking emotionally to anybody. Right. Yeah, I like that, Nicole. Thank you. Okay, so I don't have a slide on this. I'm going to stay on this slide because I had to, cut something because of it being 30 minutes, but I want to plant a seed. You can also use star for constructive feedback. So it would be, let's say instead of what's on the slide right now where it's positive, I would start off the same way. When you started your presentation at the staff meeting last week, and then this is where it's going to veer off, but then I would say, you struggled with the technology and you didn't have your handouts ready. So you can tell this is going down a different path. The result was you looked unprepared, and then we got behind on the agenda. And then depending on like the experience level of the person, if it's a brand new employee and they just did their first presentation, then you might say some tips for your next presentation to help it go a little more smoothly. And you essentially, I don't mean this to be condescending, but you spoon feed them what they should do instead, the replacement behavior. If it's a more experienced employee, I would view this as a coaching moment. And I would say for the R, instead of spoon feeding them the answer, what do you think you could have done differently? Or what do you plan to do in the future that's going to get a better outcome? And then stop talking. So there's a lot of stop talking in this star method, but say what you need to say and then stop, and either kind of it's done or you've begun a coaching conversation. So what do you think about that? Can you see how star, the same skeleton, could be used also for corrective? Does that track for you? You could just do a yes or a no in the chat. What do you think? Do you see it having like multiple usages? Okay. Yeah, engaging them. Exactly. Good. All right, excellent. Yeah, if the person did something good, mention it first, get them in the positive frame of mind, and then you can possibly transition into talking about what could be improved. Okay, appreciate that comment, Joseph. Thank you. All right, so we're going to keep going. 11 minutes, folks. So we're going to talk a little bit about receiving feedback. Cleansing breath for this one. This is hard. I think most of us struggle with this. There are a lot of people who struggle with compliments. I might be married to one of those people, but anyway, some people get very uncomfortable when you call out good things that they do. But I think it's especially hard for us to resist defensiveness when someone comes to us and says, I need to talk to you about something, that I'd like to correct, or something like that. You know, like I really felt like you could have handled that customer exchange a little bit better. Can we talk about it? Even if, you know, they're doing it in the right way, in an effective way, it's still uncomfortable for most of us, at least. I think many of us, once we've had time to step back, we have some emotional intelligence about it, and we say, I'm learning, you know, what can I learn from this? But in the moment, it can be very difficult. So I have a few ideas for this. Um, I have a quote from a book. The book reference is at the bottom of the slide. Let me reveal the quote first. I'm getting ahead of myself, but here we go. Receiving feedback sits at the intersection of these two needs: our drive to learn, and I would say improve, you know, things like that: learn, improve, get better. So that's on one side, and our longing for acceptance. Well, you know, I just want to have done a good job already. I don't really want to be corrected. I just want to rock it all the time, you know? And so there's kind of these two things, like our logical mind, our emotional intelligence tells us, I want to always be improving, which I know sometimes means someone's going to need to point out an area for improvement, but it can be so hard to hear. So I really liked that observation. There are the two authors of this book, Stone and Heen, and it's called Thanks for the Feedback: The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well. So it's an entire book. I think they actually have more than one book on this topic, but I mean, it is a big thing, a big area of research. So my advice is to have a mental map. You know, at some point, you're going to get some feedback that's going to be a little uncomfortable. Why do you know that? Because you're human. So it happens to all of us. We're all doing our best, and all of us need a little bit of help, correction along the way. So you know it's coming, you just don't know when. And that's part of it. When you're the giver of the feedback, you can prepare. You can have your star all written out or whatever. If someone just kind of bum rushes you with some negative feedback, you're like, whoa. So it's really about being mentally prepared. Like, I have a plan for how I'm going to respond. So the first thing is just to, even if it's just take a 1 second, you know, stop, just take a breath, maybe have a Mona Lisa smile, you know, and then be willing to hear what the person says. Easier said than done, I know, but that's, you know, you're going to tell yourself, Allison, just try to listen. Then kind of have a phrase. I call it like a pocket phrase. It's in your pocket. You're ready to say it, even if maybe you don't totally mean it in the moment. But thanks for taking the time to give me that feedback. You'll notice you're not saying you agree. You don't have to agree with what they're saying. I think often on reflection, we can step back and say, there was some truth in that. But in the moment, we're like, inside, that's our face. But our outside face, Mona Lisa, you know, thanks for taking the time to talk to me about this and give me this feedback or whatever. Then I feel like you have two options from this point. So one option, if you feel that you can do it, reflect back what you think you heard them say. So thanks for taking the time to give me that feedback. It sounds like you're telling me you'd like to hear me speak up more at client meetings. Is that right? So you're making sure you understood what's happening. That's one option. You are not obligated to engage on that level. That's what I think is so important about option two. It is possible that your emotional response might really be too heightened to have what we might say an appropriate response or an emotionally intelligent response in the moment. So this is your other go-to. Thanks for giving me that feedback. I'm going to need some time to think about that. You do not have to have a full-on back and forth convo in the moment. If you're not ready, you don't have to. Just say thank you, and I'd like to give that some more thought. And then we have to make sure we're being, you know, adult about it, and then truly follow up. I think whether you do option one or option two, you probably want to follow up with the person after you've had time to process or research or reflect, or, you know, however you want to view it. So what do you think about this? Does this, and you probably do something similar to this already, but um, is there anything here that stands out to you as being useful or like, yes, I do that and I would advise everyone to do it or whatever? What do you think? Yeah, Marie, you like that asking for time to think about it, right? You don't have to answer immediately, Laura. Yeah. Yeah, and I wish like I realized that much earlier because I know I sometimes, because I mean, I've received negative feedback, constructive, however you want to label it. Like I feel my face, it gets hot, and then I'm like trying to recall whatever the situation is, and I'm replaying it in my mind. I'm not really listening anymore. I'm kind of just that's all I'll say. I'm reflecting and I'm trying to manage my emotions and all these things. I don't have to keep engaging with them. I wish I had known that like in my 20s. I know you're shocked that I'm not in my 20s. Just kidding. Yeah, it was a while ago. But I wish I had known that earlier. It would have helped me, I think, in business better. Okay. So we're almost at the end of our time. I do have one final word about feedback. It may seem random that I have all these gifts here, but feedback is a gift we can all give. So I don't know, who all of you are or what your position is at your organization, but this discussion is not just for bosses or supervisors or managers. And something just came in my inbox in the last week, and I'm like, I'm going to share that in my webinar on Friday. I was so excited. So it's from the Remote Leadership Institute, and I'm going to put a link. Whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. One moment. Here's a link to the article. I just put it in the chat. I don't have any connection with this group. They've just been a resource for me for the last year. So they existed long before the pandemic. And I think they have a lot of good info. So this is an excerpt from an article, and their article was called Feedback Isn't Just the Manager's Job. And so here's a little piece of that article. We all like to hear we're doing a good job or that something we've done was appreciated. A quick email or text to a coworker takes very little time and has big results. Let them know the point they made in the meeting was really important to you, or you appreciate how quickly they got you the information you needed to complete a project. I added the bold, but here it is. It's so much easier to build positive energy between people if your past interactions have consisted of more than merely requests. So, in other words, if your whole relationship is built on just you've emailed in the past asking them for stuff, that's not much of a relationship. But if you have taken the time, kind of breadcrumbs sprinkled in the relationship along the way, where you're like, hey, thanks, Angelique, for getting on WebEx early and making me feel comfortable before my webinar started. That literally took 5 seconds to say. It would probably take me 30 seconds at the most to text her that, but I'm building this relationship with her. So I think feedback's for everyone. I really liked that idea. So I put it in the webinar, a little extra something there. So thank you all for your time. Totally appreciate all the activity in the chat that made it much more interactive. And we do have an hour-long webinar on this topic on March 22. And then we have a half day in June. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you at those. Thanks so much. Yeah, Laura, agree. That negative feedback can be extremely valuable. I appreciate you stressing that for us. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice Friday and weekend.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Allison, as well for this helpful presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please be sure to check out our website at cpshr.us for the slide deck and the recording that will be posted there. Thank you again, and have an awesome Friday and weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Trying to catch up
Thanks,
with the
John.
chat.
And Angelique, I see Walter has asked, is there a certificate for this?
If they reach out to the training center email, we can provide a certificate.
Okay,
And that's just trainingcenter@cpshr.us.
great. Thank you.
Mhm.